I think there's a big misunderstanding when it comes to VPNs. A VPN is used to connect a device on one network to another network. So if you're connected to someone else's Wi-Fi or cellular data, you could remotely connect to your own network and it would be as if you were physically connected to your home Wi-Fi. The reason why this is so useful is not to browse the internet, but to access local services that run on your network. If you're running a file server like Samba, which I showed you how to set up in the last video, you can't access it from anywhere else except for your Wi-Fi unless you port forward it, which isn't really recommended for security. So people use VPN servers to remotely connect to these servers securely. VPN companies now advertise features like changing your IP address, changing your location, bypassing Wi-Fi restrictions, and privacy. And yes, a VPN can do this, but that's not what it was meant for. Sure, you can use it to bypass restrictions and changing your location, but using a VPN while you're just on your Wi-Fi won't protect you from anything. When you're browsing the web, your traffic is already encrypted because of HTTPS. So people cannot see what you're doing on any website. I'll be making a whole video going in depth on why you don't need a VPN for using the public internet, and I'll explain how it works. But anyways, this video will show you how to set up your own VPN on your own network using Wireguard. We'll set this up in a Docker container using the Linux server Docker image. All you need to do is change a couple of settings and then that's it. Anyways, if this works for you, please leave a like and subscribe and let's start the video. So this is the Wireguard image from linuxserver.io. And linuxserver.io Docker images are usually the one you should go with. They're updated pretty frequently. This one's updated 2 days ago. And it's super simple to set up. All you need to do is change a couple of options and then you're good to go. And we're going to create a Docker compose file for this. So click on the link in the description and it'll take you to the official GitHub for this Docker image. And then scroll down to like the middle of the page and you should see this Docker compose file. So I'm going to copy this and now let's create our Docker container on our Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to SSH into my Raspberry Pi first. Alright, I'm going to place this Wireguard Docker compose file in the optional directory. I'm just going to make a new directory and call that Wireguard. Okay, now I'm going to change into that directory. And now let's create our Docker compose file like this. Then click enter. And now we're editing this file. So first I'm just going to paste it in here. Now these are just the default options. Now what we're going to do is change some of these variables. So the first one we're going to do is change the time zone. If you want to put your own time zone, you can. I don't know if this really matters, but I'm just going to change it. Now for the server URL, just keep it at auto. If you don't know what you're doing, just set it to auto and everything will work fine. Okay, now for the server port, you can change this to whatever you want and you don't have to change it at all. It's not like it'll make your server any more safer. I'm just going to change it anyways, since if someone's using a script to scan like a lot of networks, they're not going to scan every single port. So I'm just going to change it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 just for security. For the number of peers, if you want to name these peers, I suggest that you don't just put a number or whatever. This is how you name the peers. You just place them like this without any spaces in between. So just a comma and then immediately put the peer name. So I'm going to add 2 peers for now. And for the peer DNS, you can set this to whatever you want. I'm going to make it the Cloudflare DNS, which is 1.1.1.2 and 1.0.0.2. The normal Cloudflare DNS is 1.1.1.1 and 1.0.0.1. And I think this one is supposed to block websites that are known for malware. So that's what I'm going to set it to. And for the internal subnet, this won't really matter because we're not running this Docker container on the host network. If you wanted this to have an internal subnet that shows up on the whole network, you'll have to make this run on the host network. Since this Docker container is running in the Docker network on our local machine, whenever the Wireguard client makes a request to another device on your home network, all it will see is the IP address of the server computer that Wireguard is running on. It won't see a different IP address. I would like for it to have a different subnet, but I don't really know how to get this to work. I've tried setting the Docker container to host mode, but it doesn't really seem to work. So if anyone knows how to fix this, just leave it in the comments and I'll greatly appreciate it, because I want to set up IP whitelisting, but that can't really work unless they have their own IP address. But for now, I'm just going to delete this by using Ctrl and K, and it'll just delete the whole line. Now for allowed IP addresses, what this is saying is what traffic should be routed through the server and what traffic shouldn't. So if you don't change this, all your traffic will be routed through the VPN server. And some people might want that. So if you only want your local services being routed through the VPN, then you can change that. So if your local network uses something like 10.0.0. whatever, and you set it to /24, I'm pretty sure, then any requests sent to an IP address that starts with 10.0.0 will be routed through the VPN server, and then you can access everything on your home network. But I'm just going to set this to the default thing, so all your traffic will be routed through the VPN server. And then I'm just going to delete these bottom two options because we don't really need these. Now here we're going to specify the volumes. These are the shared folders and files between the container and the computer. So we're going to have to map the config folder into our computer, so we can actually access the configuration files. So what I'm going to do is place this config folder inside of the same directory. So it's just going to be /optional/wireguard. So this is where the folder will be in my computer. And then this is just the location of the config folder inside of the container. We don't really need to worry about that, so don't change that. And then for this, just leave this as default. And now for the ports, now you only need to change this option if you changed the server port. So what this is saying is port 51820 will be mapped to port 51820 on the container. So any request sent to 51820 to the computer will be sent to 51820 in the actual container. But we don't want the server to accept requests coming from 51820. We want all requests that are sent to port 12345 that are sent to the computer. It should be just routed to port 51820 to the actual container, and then WireGuard will receive that request. So all you need to do is port forward this port, and then everything will work fine. You shouldn't port forward this port. This restart unless stopped means that this container will always restart unless you stop it manually. So if you restart your computer, this container will also restart, and that is what most people want. And then if you stop it manually, it'll just stay stopped until you start it again. So that's all you need to change for the Docker Compose file. Just click Ctrl X, Y, and enter to save it. And now we can start the container. So to do this, we're gonna have to do Docker Compose. Make sure you have that installed correctly. Then up to start it up, and -D. Then click enter. So right now it's just pulling the image from linuxserver.io, and then it will start the container with the variables that we provided. Okay, now the container is running, and if you want to see that, you can type docker ps and enter, and it should show you the WireGuard container. And you can also see the Samba container that I made in the last video. So I'm just gonna type clear to clear this out, and if you type ls, you should see a config folder pop up, and we're gonna go into that, and in those folders you'll have the configuration file which you need to connect to the WireGuard server. But first, I'm going to show you how to add more users if you want to add more in the future. So we're going to go back to directory, and we're going to edit the Docker Compose file. So to add more users, edit the Docker Compose file and just add them there. Then after you added as many as you want, you can go ahead and save this. And then we have to recreate this Docker container. And to do that, you type docker-compose up-d and -- force recreate. But we won't lose any data since we have a shared volume, which is the configuration folder. So this configuration folder has all of our peers, and nothing will be erased. So if we recreate this Docker container, this will stay the same, and this will stay the same. And it'll just create another peer called peer 3. So I'm just going to recreate this container, and then you'll see the peer 3 folder pop up in the configuration folder. It doesn't take that long to recreate. And now if we go ahead and change directory into the config folder, you'll now see the new peer over here. And now I'm just going to go into peer 1 and show you where the configuration file is. This is the file needed to connect to your WireGuard server, and this is a PNG image of a QR code. And that QR code just contains this file. So if you just scan this PNG file on your phone, you can add it to your WireGuard app. Now I'm going to show you how to get this configuration file off of your server and onto your computer or your phone. This is the easiest way to get the configuration file to your phone or your computer. You go ahead and run this one Python command. You should have Python installed, it should be there automatically. But if you don't, just go ahead and install it. Then make sure you're in the folder with the configuration file. Then run this command. And then you can put in http:// the IP address of your server, and then the port you specified. You can pick some random port. Then it'll show you a web page, and you can go ahead and tap on the configuration file, and then you should be able to download it instantly. This would be unsafe, but we're on our home network, so it doesn't really matter. Then after that, just stop the HTTP server by clicking Ctrl+C. So for this, we're gonna have to log out of our SSH connection. So to do that, Ctrl+D, or just type logout. And then on Linux and Mac, you can type scp, which will copy a file from a remote location. So for me, this remote location is my Raspberry Pi. When we're using the scp command, we first type scp space, and then you type the source for the location. And what you do is first type the user at the IP address of the remote location. That's the IP address on my Raspberry Pi. And then you type a colon, and then you type where it is. So my configuration file is in /optional/wireguard /config/peer_peer1. That's peer_peer1.png. And then we have to specify where we want to save it to on our computer. So I'm just going to put this in the desktop folder. We're going to do the squiggly line and -desktop. Now it will ask me for the Pi's password, and then it should copy the PNG file to your desktop. Then you should be able to open that file on your computer and then scan it on your phone. But if you're on a computer and you want to add this Wireguard server into your Wireguard app on your computer, you can just copy the configuration file and then import that into the Wireguard app. Anyways, that is how you set up a Wireguard server using Docker. So if this works for you, please leave a like and subscribe, or if it didn't, leave a comment down below and I'll try my best to help you out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.